Okay, it's that time again where Mark tries to make some bread for you guys to follow along with. So, what we're going to start out with is a cup of my starter. And so this starter has been with me since September, so it's had a long-ish life, not by some standards. I actually managed to almost kill it. I was away from the house for a couple days, and then even when I got home, I didn't feed it. And so definitely needed to be kick-started back into life. But now it's in a place where it's pretty good. So we're doing a cup of that, and then added to that, we're going to add a cup or so of, this is basically all-purpose flour. It's rated 530 here in Germany. And so it's nutrient-rich, sort of like, you know, it's got a lot of gluten production, whatever, a lot of good sugars to ferment. Looks like I only got a half cup there. And so I'm going to open this bad boy up. It's got a nice hole in the side. Try not to make a mess. Oopsie. There we go. So about a cup of fresh flour. That'll be some added nutrients. And then we're going to add 1 cup of water. There we go. And then going to give that bad boy a mix. And we're just going to, once it's all sort of gooped together and all the big lumps are sort of broken down, mixed up, we're going to mix this later, but really what I want to try to do is give the yeast some fresh food to eat to get started before mixing in the rest of the flour, the salt, and all that good stuff. So this is basically like like I'm feeding the yeast as I would for the starter. So in fact, I can even do that right now. I could just take my measuring cup here, prep my starter for future use, giving it a cup of flour, and cup of water. I like to keep my yeast starter sort of in a liquidy shape. I don't need it to be super firm or anything. I like it when it's a bit more liquid because then I have a bit more control on how much flour I can add. I know on the internet some people like it the other way apparently, and so you can always add more water to the consistency you like, but I have a problem with adding too much flour, so I'd rather start from a place where that's less of a problem. There we go. That's all incorporated. It's going to be covered back up, and then I can get to this tomorrow. That just sort of lives on the counter. This bad boy is going to just sit for the next, I don't know, 15-30 minutes till it's got some bubbles going. And then we will continue on with the rest of the recipe. Okay, so it's had a little bit of time to rise. What we're going to do here is we're going to add the remaining bits. So I've got some rye flour. So I want to get a little bit of color in this bread. I like the rye texture. Boom, do a cup of rye. We're going to add 1, 2, 3, 4-ish pinches, some large pinches of salt. You know, it's based on taste. I've done enough of this bread that I kind of have a feel for what I'm going for. And then I'm also going to add in got half a cup here. Not half a cup. Yeah, I guess about 100 milligrams of sour cream. I'm going to do half of that. So I guess 50 mils of sour cream. No, fuck it. We're going to do the whole thing. There we go. Bam. Nailed it. So do about 100 mils of sour cream. And we're also got some of these chili peppers. I've rehydrated. These were dried chilies. Rehydrated them in water from the other night. I'm just going to cut them up to little sort of rings here. Try not to get all the seeds. The seeds don't have a ton of flavor I'm looking for. I'm looking for the flesh. There we go. In the end, it doesn't matter a ton. Once it's baked, they're not going to be slimy or anything, but I'm just not as keen on seeds in my food. Couple slices here. Sort of break those bad boys up. So there we go. It's about half a chili's worth of sliced and diced. These are specifically California chilies from California. So you can use whatever you got. This is a flexible recipe. Additionally, we want a few glugs of olive oil. I just sort of give a couple lines worth to sit on top there, something like that. Not a ton, just enough to give it a little bit of fatty umami-ness. And additionally, we want to toss in. We're gonna try something new. We'll see how it works out. I've got a little cup here. It's probably about a cup worth of. Let me use a measuring cup here. It's a mix of Emmental cheese and some what's called butter cheese here in Germany, Butterkäse, sort of like a fattier, richer, I don't know, like a Kobe style cheese. And I think, I mean, it should be fine overnight, because that's the time it's going to need. But I want to do a cheese bread here. So we're going to try to see what it's like if it rises overnight with the cheese on the inside. If it helps, it's detrimental. In the end, it's going to be cooked, so any issues in regards to like bacteria, whatever, it's going to be a non-starter. This thing is getting up to 240, 220 degrees Celsius. That's going to kill like everything. But yeah, so I think we're going to put that in there too. So give that a bad boy shot. So I get spread in. Less of a problem with having to add it later when pouring. So there we go. And then I'm going to give this bad boy a mix. And we're going to look at the consistency. So it should form a nice little dough. If it doesn't, then we're going to have to add a little bit more flour. Add a little bit moisture with the sour cream. So it's going to be a bit more wet than I'm used to. And it's definitely showing up. It's a very loose, sort of batter-looking consistency. So we're going to add a little bit more of the all-purpose flour here. So this is the current consistency, a bit like a soupy mess. And I want it to kind of come together, not fully. I don't need it to hold its shape, but I do need it to kind of whip together in like kind of a strudel shape when stirring it here together. So this is still a bit too liquidy. Maybe a little bit more flour. So this is a lot of trial and error, but I know what I want it to look like. And that's, I guess, the important part. Also, with the added flour, I might want to do just another pinch and a half of salt just because I feel like I've added about a cup or half a cup's worth, not a cup, but like a half cup's worth of flour here. And undersalted bread is a bit of a letdown. All right, so this is almost there. So it's still quite liquidy, still moves around a lot. I wonder, adding, I got a pepper mill here. Let's put a little pepper in there too. Why not? I usually pepper on top my bread before I throw it in the oven, but it might be nice to have a little bit of sharpness in there. But no, what I'm looking here is to have just a tiny bit, just a little bit more shape in the dough. There we go. See, that's kind of what I'm looking for. I want it to still fall in on itself. Like, it shouldn't be so structurally sound that, there we go, that, yeah, it's like a big ball of dough. Because since this is a sourdough, it doesn't really take to kneading very well. But what you kind of want to do, once you get it all incorporated here, is to just sort of fold it in on itself. So make sure the bottom here, there we go, is all incorporated. And then over the next, I don't know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, I'll check in on it and just sort of fold it back in on itself. And this is just to keep what little gluten's going on continuing to develop, while also, there we go, letting it continue to rise. So this is going to do most of its work overnight, but right now we're just going to let it hang out in the bowl, and we'll check in on it. And I don't know, another 15-20. Okay, so what you want to do here, let it rest a little bit. And so we're just going to sort of scoop, fold, scoop, fold, a couple times. We get underneath it. Just let it fold it back on itself. We'll do this a couple more times before let it rest for the night. Okay, after rolling the dough over a couple times, it's ready to throw in the pan to sort of rise overnight. I know online I see let it rise in the bowl, but whatever. It's going to be cooking in here anyway. I've normally, in the last several times I've made this bread, left it in an oiled pan, and that leads to some issues. When I bake it, I try to let it cook on top and start to cook on the sides, but because of the cheese and the moisture content, the bottom doesn't get quite as cooked by the time I want to transfer it out of the pan, and so I end up destroying the bottom part of the bread. So what I'm going to try to do is, the idea is into this parchment paper lined bread mold, pour the dough, and then when it comes time to baking it in the morning, this should just, the bread able to pull right out using the parchment paper, and hopefully the bottom won't be as marred. I'm also probably going to add, not a bad idea, just a bit of oil, just even in the parchment paper here, just to make sure that, to discourage binding with the paper here. It shouldn't matter, it is a wax lined paper, I think, or something like that. It's not particularly permeable. Stay bread. Alright, cool. And so what you want to do is sort of let it just fall in. So just letting gravity do most of the work. And then evenly sort of distributed along the mold. I'm not too worried about getting everything in this bowl in there. It should rise quite a lot. It definitely got a lot of extra flour to compensate for the extra moisture, and so this will probably proof overnight in excess of the bread mold, but I'm okay with that. There we go, push that in the corners. Great, all right, cool, and we're gonna let this bad boy sort of just rest overnight. Lately, I find just throwing basically a towel over top discourages any flies or whatever from getting in there, but it's just gonna do its thing. So I'll see you in the morning. Okay, it's the next morning, and our loaf has poofed up a bit. I'll throw a little bit of just a smidge, some cracked pepper on top. And then we're going to crank that bad boy up to cycle the air all the way up to 240-ish. And then I'm going to throw the bread in there and let that continue to proof. Go. Alright, and then we're going to let that cook. Okay, pulled this out after 40 minutes. It's got pretty dark here on the top, but the sides should be still brown. So we're going to lift that up and see what it looks like. Okay, so it got a nice brown crust on the outside, but it is paper thin. Like, it's still quite gooey on the inside there. So I'm going to let that continue to cook in the oven, but I'm dropping the temp all the way down to like 150 Celsius. And I'm just going to let it sort of continue to cook the insides. Alright, and there we go. That's 1 hour basically cook time. And half of that time spent on high heat, the rest of it left to just sort of continue to cook. Now, it's got a lot of cheese in there, so it's still got a lot of residual heat. I'm going to leave it in one piece before cutting it up at school. But yeah, I wanted to share that. This is how I do my sourdough rye cheesy bread.